The issue we're looking to resolve is the inability to view departments. If I go to my client groups and go to workforce structures, from workforce structures, I want to navigate down to departments, and within departments, I want to have the ability to query all departments. When I click on search, kind of see some lines coming up for a moment, but there's no return. If I look for a specific department, BSc, cancer, and click search, couldn't find any matching departments. Now, we know they're in the system, but we're unable to see them. So there's a view that the indexes need to be built, which involves granting a role and running certain processes. Just looking at the notes for this test, the role to add is IMP, Human Resource Specialist, View All, and this role has been granted. And just to check that that role's been granted, if we come down to tools and go to security console and check the user and make sure that the role is granted, when we go to users and search, for example, by first name, so from users, go to first name, and let's go to our username and drill down and have a look at the imp role and make sure it's been granted. So that's the first check. So we come down and I can see, yeah, IMP, Human Resource Specialist, View All. So that's a role required for advice to be able to view departments. That role is there. But as we can see, it didn't make a difference in being able to see departments from the front end. So we'll take the next part of the advice, which is to build the indexes. So for our Dev6 environment, our problem is unable to view departments. So we need to build indexes for the environment. So the first thing to do is to run processes. So from rules and schedule processes, we want to run an ESS job. And we want to run it with 6 different parameters. And that means running each job individually in this sequential order. And the job we want to create run is ESS job to create index definition to perform initial ingest to OSCS. So let's take a copy of the process that we want, and then we'll come back here and do the parameters. And then once we've run all these parameters, we then need to run another process, which is compute users ACL with the parameter all users. And we can see below we have added the role. So we'll check again after running all of these processes. Now we've got the role also. Can we then see departments? So firstly, let's run our job first process. So we can go to tools. And then once at tools, we'll go to schedule processes. Down here for schedule processes to schedule a new process. And the process we're looking for is ESS job to create. So click tab, click OK, and it will bring up the job and it will go index name to re-ingest. So the first index we want to build is FAHCM, save search. So we'll paste that in nicely. Okay, and we'll submit. And we can see this process has been submitted. Just grab the process number. Okay, and click refresh. Okay, it's come at the top. Otherwise, I was going to search based on the process ID number just to make it easier to view. And you can see, okay, that's succeeded. So let's go to the second, so the same process, but second parameter. So submit new process. Yes, we want the same process. And the second ingested parameter will be for person. So let's take person and we will submit. So now we have the second process running. Just click on search. Because it's got the previous number, it's only searching the one job. If I remove the process ID, we can see it a bit more clearly now. And maybe looking at the process name might be the better search while this is running, because we've got 6. So it's searching by name. And it's in the last 24 hours. If I do it in the last hour, that will return a lesser search number and returns. Yeah, so we can see our 2 here. So the second one is currently running. That may take a bit of time. And we'll let that run for a moment, and then we'll go to job, position, location, and organization as we're completing these one by one. And then we'll run a different role process, which is compute users for ACL. So just letting this process run for a bit, let it get to completion, let it finish properly. So just give that some time to run. And the issue that we're having, which is a larger issue, is we have a custom bit report, which is taking our users from Fusion into WorkTribe, and unfortunately the status is archive for all, and it's archive for all because we've got our employees associated to departments, and the department setting is allow for WorkTribe eligibility costing as a null value, which is equivalent to no, which means don't allow them to be ingested into WorkTribe. So we don't see our users being eligible to be costed against projects within WorkTribe. So we need to go into departments, view departments, and update departments and change the eligibility from a no to a yes. And in the first instance, if we can't find our departments, that's the big issue, that we can't change the setting. So if we can't even search on departments, we can't take the setting to be changed for the ingest to happen within WorkTribe, for the costing to take place. So that's why we're building these indexes, to be able to view departments in the first place. So that's where we are. Okay, great. So the second process is now completed. Let's run the process again, same process now. Take the third parameter. So the third parameter now will be FAHCM job. So we'll take job, we'll put it in to ingest, and I just check there's no spaces or any issues before and after on the parameter. That can be an issue. It's got to be the exact spelling. Okay, we can see this one has been submitted. So that's our third one to go through, and we'll go through the statuses now. So we go to wait and running, and then hopefully get to succeeded. In previous tests, we've seen the very last process that we had, the status was none of these, and it was just retry. It wasn't actually running, and it may be that the index was stuck somewhere. So we'll see if we have that issue here in this particular run. So now we have the third process now successfully created. Now let's run the same process with the fourth parameter. So same process, and let's now put in a fourth parameter, which is FAHCM position. So take position, and we will submit. And again, going through the statuses, it's just in the beginning of running the process. So go from wait to ready, and then we would like it to see it running, and then going to succeeded, as and when it's run. I mean, if we look at the timings, we can see our first one was run at 04 submitted. So the first couple of processes are quite quick. Then maybe 4 minutes for the next one and 1 minute for our current one in process. So completing in good time is the conclusion that we can see from the submission times. So we'll allow this one to run for a moment. So why are we even in this position? Sometimes when we have new environments, and this is our Dev 6 environment, it could well be a lack of process was there, and as such, these indexes weren't built as part of either a runbook activity or a configuration workbook activity, more likely to be in the runbook, so that it needs to be added to ensure that this doesn't happen again in the next environment. This is a UAT environment. The next environment could well be a production environment. So we want to make sure that this is completed successfully in the next environment, these activities. And great, that succeeded. Let's just move on to the next process now. So same process and next parameter. So this is going to be the 5th. So we are now on location. Let's take it and allow this one to run. And just be a bit diligent on no spaces before and after. And then no funny characters. Yep, looks good. Let's submit. This is that 5th process, ending in 60, being submitted. So just increase the bottom here so we have a view of all the processes in one shot. We can see the escalating times and a view of everything in one go. So we know we want to run one more after this, so we'll go through that process. We're coming up to 12 minutes in this process so far, so it's, what I would say, reasonable. Okay, that succeeded, very good. Let's go to now the last part of this. So same process, and we want our last parameter for the building of the indexes, which is FAHCM organization. So let's take that and bring that over and just do that little check again. It's worthwhile because I don't want to mess this up. Okay, we click on submit and submitted. I'm just wondering, is that all of them so far? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, okay, this is the last one in this first set of the processes. So the first thing was to ensure that the ESS job to create index definition and perform initial ingest into OSCS was run 6 times with 6 parameters, which we're going through at the moment. And then there's a second step. So this is our first step, which is complete. So if you just come to the notes. So we've run this part. The next one we want to do is then run the job below, which is compute users ACL, and the parameter all users. Bottom part, we've got the role. So let's do this second part then. So compute users ACL. Let's run this process. So submit new process. And that's how it's done. Let's put the new one in. Click tab to bring this up from list of values. Compute users by ACL, which is what we want. I'll double check on the notes. And then parameter all users. So this is the one I want. So click OK to that. Hopefully we'll get a parameter screen coming up soon. Yeah, all users, which is fine. And then click submit. So submitted. So allowing the ability for all users with the right roles to be able to view departments. So I'll take the name away from this index and I'll take the name of this process, which is compute users ACL. Or if I wanted to see everything that I've run, if I just do UTOK, because that's part of my username, it brings me all the processes rather than just being restricted by a process ID or just the name of a process. If I want to see everything I've submitted in the last hour, this is probably the best way to see it in one shot. There are lots of other processes being run on the system. It's just nice to see what you're running sometimes. So this one is now compute used by ACL, and this may well spawn child processes for different users underneath. So it might have a long listing coming from this parent process, and we see it here, compute AL user processor, and then we have individual spawned processes underneath which are running. So that may take a bit of time to run. Let's see it go through the process. So this is submitted roughly 10:14, so just a minute ago. Let's see it run through the process and come to its own conclusion. So you have the initial top level process and spawned processes underneath. These child processes are running. So we'll give some time for those to run. When we see the overall status of the parent process, it's paused until everything underneath is running. So what we saw was um, running and processing and eventually succeeded. So we want to eventually see that status in the child processes and then in the parent process as well. So we'll allow this one to run and take its time. And when that's finished, you could argue, well, let's now navigate over to department straight away. But just a little bit of housekeeping from experience, it would be better at the time when these are succeeded to actually log out of Oracle completely, maybe even close the browser, and then open up a browser and log back in from scratch just to make sure that everything's refreshed properly and there's nothing in the cache hanging and holding on to any old data or navigation, so that we can just be confident that are we looking at true updates based on running these processes from what we're seeing on the front end within Fusion is where we want to go. So we can see some child processes spawn, so a top parent process. Then we underneath see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 child processes underneath. So we'll let that run for some time and then see the next stage. So from a notes point of view, issue being unable to view departments in our new environment. We want to build these indexes for that environment, and you could argue that the fact that we had to run these 6 individually, is there an easier way to do that? And there is within Fusion, is we could create a job set. In EBS terms, that's a requisition set, where we could have the functionality to say, I want to create an ESS job set. So set more than one, many. So rather than individually creating this, I could just run one job set that runs this one process with this parameter. And after that's completed, it will then run the same process with the second parameter, and again and again and again until we do all 6 in an automated fashion and in a sequential fashion, where after one has succeeded, it will then run the next one. So not in parallel, sequentially, rather than individually having to do this. And this should be at the start of having a new environment. So maybe just arguing whether is it worth having the job set or just doing this manually at the beginning of an environment is something to think about. And then knowing that this would have to be run after as well, compute users ACL. Would that be part of the job set? Could also be something as a consideration, as well as from a business process point of view, making sure that the user has the IMP human resource specialist viewable to be able to view the departments. So let's come back to Fusion for a second and refresh with the curly arrow over here to see if these are updated. It's currently in process. It could take some time. So let's give it the opportunity to take as long as it needs to and just do view and show all from within schedule processes to see what information is useful when looking at processes. So schedule time is good because it gave us an idea of the length of time these processes should take. So far, nothing was really hanging or in what we call a retry status. It actually is in a running status, so that's some confidence that it's actually started the process. We've had instances where we have started a different status of almost not starting yet, so retrying. So it's like trying to even start the process, which is a status before running. So at least we're running, which is a confident status that this is actually going somewhere. And paused is just the overall status, waiting for all the runnings to complete and get succeeded, and then pause can change to succeeded is positive expectation we're looking for here. So we wait to see how that comes through. So just refreshing that. We can see submission time and also completion time. So for the earlier ones, we can say, well, for the very first one, you submitted it at 10:04 and it finished at 10:04. The second process, again, 10:04 and it took 3 minutes to 10:07. Gives you an indication of how long these processes take from submission time and completed time. It's always interesting just to keep an eye on that, just have a look at system performance. Yeah, so we can get some information, which can just give us an idea sometimes of why things are taking so long or not. Do a little refresh to see if it's still running. Yeah, so this could take some time, and sometimes we have a process, and we've seen this recently, and we're thinking, okay, well, it's not in a pause status, it's in a retrying status, as I mentioned earlier, and we saw this yesterday in additional testing that we're doing from today, and we were like, okay, let's try and scrub that process and start it again, meaning I want to cancel this. So if you highlight the line and it's blue, some buttons above then highlight for you for additional functionality. So what you want to do is then cancel that process. I won't do that here, but that was an opportunity to do that. And there's also opportunity to view log. So viewing the log to get an idea of output as where are you in your particular status for the job being run for this ESS job, to get more information to see what's being processed or has been processed. Also has dependency on the status as well. So if this is a current running status, can I view a log versus succeeded? I should definitely be able to see a log. So if I come back to our line of paused, would I be able to view a log? So if I click on the line there and it does light up. So if I view log there just to get an idea, and we see our cursor whirring away here, thinking, would it download anything and show us? So there are some logs so far, so we could go in and have a look for this compute users ACL and have a log as it downloads, and we can open it up and just get a view. Okay, there's just, yeah, okay, so it's actually looking at some users so far. We can see there's 28,000 that it's been looking, and just to get an idea. Okay, and discussing also the child's processes that we mentioned a bit earlier are also being run, and it's waiting for child jobs to complete, which is kind of what we say on the front end. It's just giving us more information from what we can see it's actually happening itself. So we can see, okay, compute users ACL, and we saw the list of the users that it's computing for, and it also mentions, but I'm also looking to see my child processes also, which have spawned complete as well. They're currently running. So if we refresh, and the status is still running, probably because there are so many users. So this could take a bit of time. So let's allow that to run. And from a work tribe perspective, if I just go into the work tribe environment just to make the case as to what the issue is, and if I go into a work tribe record and I take one of our users here, Anastasia, and say, well, okay, what was the issue? Well, the issue was that if we go to all projects, and if I go to Project Live to have a look at some projects there and just try to find one that's not a test project, but what I call a realistic real project, and just pick one. And what I'm interested in doing is, in the budget of this project, is I wanted to add a user, and I pick my user here. What I see is Anastasia is available to be costed for this project, but this is an historic username as opposed to a user that we might data migrated. So if I open up a second WorkTribe tab, and if I search for people, this is the point I'm trying to make, that if I now look for Anastasia, I can see that there's two records here for Anastasia, both DSC cancer. Well, if I look at the top record for Anastasia, and I'm looking at the email address, because that's the biggest clue. This is the already Anastasia was on WorkTribe. So this was her, I'll say, primary record. And then we migrated from Fusion to WorkTribe, and it duplicated a new user because unfortunately in our data migration we had a DM3 underscore for username and email, which created a new user. But that new user, even though it's the same user, we want this to be available for project costing. And the issue that we have with Anastasia, so just going down into this record, we can see here's a DM3. So we can see that she's come through to WorkTribe, and I should be able to see when I cost against two project, two users for WorkTribe, and I don't, I just see one. This is the primary record for her, not what we data migrated. So if I come back to our user here, how could I tell that when I go into the details of this user? I can see down below there's a staff identifier, which is the SID number in Fusion, and this does not come across. When I come over here, I see a post ref, which doesn't represent the SID number for this user. But if I go to the original user that we had in WorkTribe and go into details, I can see a staff identifier, but that's representative more on this user rather than the secondary user here. So even though it's come through to WorkTribe, if I come through to the BIP report, the fact that it's got an archive flag of yes means it doesn't allow it for costing. And if I can just turn the department setting for WorkTribe eligibility from a null value to a yes, then this user that we see here would then be available as a second line here saying almost the same, but with a different post ref number. And I can actually add them to projects and cost them against projects. That's our problem, that we don't see that user here because the department setting isn't there. And why? It's because the indexes aren't built for departments to view departments, which is why we're running these processes here since that last process. So let's just click on that, and we see it's still running. And we're kind of about half an hour into this process now. But we're at the very end, which is compute users for ACL. But this is getting close to completion, which should hopefully bring us closer to being able to view departments and update departments for the setting. And once the department setting has been updated, there are a couple of things to do, which is from Fusion, you've updated the department settings to allow eligibility for costing. And what that means is, so if I just duplicate this, if I wanted to, I can't. So I can't show you a department, but I can give you an idea of what it would look like. So if I go to workforce structures from my client groups to look at departments, then what I'm interested in doing is from departments is, can I see a return? And I click here and I go, no, I can't, not yet, because that process isn't completed. But if I added a department, just to make the point, I won't enter a new department, but I'll just show you the area that we're looking to update if I could return a department. So if I brought back the department details with these indexes being built that allowed me to successfully update department for WorkTribe eligibility, what would I actually do? So if this was DSC cancer, for example, or DSC surgery, or ELEC, one of the engineering types of departments, or whatever the department is, what I would really want to do is to be able to navigate to the bottom, and there's a a setting for work tribe eligibility for costing, and that's what I really want to update, and it's in this additional information section down at the bottom, and it's here eligible for work tribe costs. So right now there is no setting here, and that is the same case for all the departments that we have in our Fusion environment. For the Dev 6, it's exactly like this. There'll be no setting, so you could say there's no yes, there's no no, like we see in here. And if there's nothing here, as we see now, that's basically a null value, and a null value is equivalent, the same thing as basically saying no, which is, are you eligible for work tribe costs? No. So if I take away no and just leave it blank, it means no. So you're either yes, or you're actually no, or you have no value, a null value, and that's the same as being no. So that means this department, if it was DSC cancer, is not eligible for work tribe costs. So if I'm an employee in the system and I'm assigned to the department DSC cancer, and we can see here it's not eligible for work tribe costs, then when we run a BIP report, that means over here, and it's DSC cancer, it will archive me. It will take me over into work tribe, as we saw, and we saw that over here. I can see myself in work tribe, but when I try and cost myself against a project, I won't see my role here. So I wouldn't see my name and saying DSC cancer for my new ingested person that we've brought across. So I may well be in work tribe, but I can't be costed against projects, which is kind of like the point of what we want to do. So that is the issue, to try and give a bit more explanation to it and more context to it. So what do we want to do is, when these indexes is run, is to be able to say, oh, I can now query on departments, I can bring it back, and I want to now manually update eligible for work tribe costs to yes. And then I would submit that and it would update it, and I could see yes for my department. And then I would want to run a full HR integration from Fusion to work tribe. And there's a kind of like a precursor thing before then, is I would want to then rerun the BIP report, and I'd expect to see this archive flag go from a yes to a no, because do not archive me, allow me to go through to work tribe with my department, and then when I run the HR integration, I want to see that. And you may not see any difference from here on this screen, because you'd say, well, I'll still see my same self coming through again. But it's on this screen when we cost against a project, there'll be a second line underneath, because I'm now not archived. I'm allowed to go through with DSC cancer, and I can then add myself as a person to the staff DI for this particular project. So that's the successful sort of happy path that we want to get to, which we don't have in this current moment. So that's adding some context to this. So we are going through this test, as we see now, to ensure that we have got everything that we want to be able to create these indexes by running the process with the parameters, and then when that's complete, and we saw that being successful, to be able to then run the second process, compute ACL, as we're seeing now, to then prove, can we log in and be able to view departments successfully. So we'll let this process run, and in another video we will look at inquiring at departments to ensure that that is successfully completed. So that's it for this video in understanding why we can't view departments, what we're doing about it by creating indexes, what we're doing after creating index processes, 6 of them, then computing ACL, ensuring that we have a correct role associated to us to view departments later, IMP, Human Resource Specialist, view all, being able to think about in work tribe, yes, I can see the person successfully brought through. I understand what that means from an archive perspective, though. When I actually try and cost a person against the project, I don't visibly see them there. and what the consequence of that is, and what the rectification of that is by building the indices and running the BIP report and seeing the archive flaggers know, and then running a full HR interface to bring them over to be able to see that second line. So that's where we have got to, and we'll allow this second process to keep running. But I think this video is fine for now for the understanding of the rectification of not being able to view a department in the first instance and to build the indices to view them at a later date. So thank you for watching.